Hello, my name is Deb Coviello, host of the Drop In CEO podcast. I am grateful again that you've joined me, and week after week, I hope that I have and will continue to provide you amazing value. Now, this week's theme is a little bit different. I have to live in the moment when I think about what kinds of insights do I want to share with you. And sometimes inspiration comes at the last minute. And I'm often but inspired by the people that I speak with along the way. So when I am sitting on my couch with my son's dog Gabby with me, thinking about what will provide value for you this week, the end result is I leave my production company a little bit nervous as I come in under the wire. So a big shout out to Liz and Amanda who bear with me as, like I said, I lean into my inspiration and it comes at the 11th hour. But I am so grateful I leaned into it because this week's conversation is about conflict, but it's a little bit different. And if you know me, I think a little bit different from the rest of the people out there. That's how we set myself apart, hence the drop in CEO. But what I want to propose to you when you think about conflict in the workplace, in your community, in your family, think about by embracing conflict, this will help you to stay ahead of the conflict. Again, lean into the conflict, own it, embrace it, have your radar up when you are starting to feel conflict coming up. Lean into it because, again, it's your superpower. Lean into it, embrace conflict because many good things can come from it. And you might say, Deb, I don't get it. I don't get it. I try to avoid conflict. That's why I put these processes and systems in place. I talk about risk based thinking. We want to avoid conflict or crisis so we don't negatively impact and users, customers, even ourselves. But let's just hear me out for a little bit because you know me, I always have a story, and this one comes close to home. The conflict associated with my daughter. My daughter is 22. She's a senior at UK in architecture, and she's applying to grad school and she's had a conflict with it. She got into 2 grad schools. Unfortunately, one of the grad schools that she really wanted to get into, she got into it, but it wasn't exactly the program that she had expected. Conflict, emotions, tears, all of the above. But next, it doesn't end there. She also had her car stolen from in front of her apartment. And that was a whole big ordeal. We were there for her. Things are fine. We've got a replacement vehicle. The emotions and tears have subsided. And finally, she's applying for an internship this summer. She has to earn money as well as gain valuable experience. And the one that she really, really, really wanted unfortunately had some change of leadership and priorities and said they couldn't offer her a job at this time, but they really, really wanted her. So good for her. She had a second offer and she took it. The bad thing is that the first one that came back to her that said things have changed and we'd like you to come on board. So, oh my God, the tears and the emotions returned. But here's the thing about it is that because of these things, they were all opportunities or challenges. She was stronger because of the conflict. She was resourceful to lean into her family or others to help resolve these issues. And while the conflict wasn't pleasing, it was rather stressful. She was prepared to manage through these. So, again, she had to respond to these conflicts. It wasn't easy, but she was well prepared based on her upbringing, maybe a little optimism from me, knowing if you sleep on something, things are clear in the daytime. So, we got through that. So, a little bit about myself, but I also want to talk about another piece of inspiration. Again, the theme this week is embracing conflict to stay ahead. And I know, like I said, we should put in systems to avoid these things. However, things happen. It's a reality. You can't avoid everything. But I have some more inspiration, and I was really hoping to get this person on my podcast. I came to know this person David Makarith. And we are gonna have you on my podcast. We were just talking yesterday, and he had great insights, great conversation about all the different times he was dropped into organizations and resolved conflicts. I mean, they went on and on. He had this binder, this amazing binder that was his I don't know, not his virtual resume, but it was his tangible resume. So anytime he had the opportunity to engage with people that were experiencing a conflict, he had the proof and, that he was qualified to handle anything. However, when we were talking, he said, I've even proposed to organizations, and again, he gave me permission to use this, is put me on your board as your chief conflict officer. And the kind of conflict that he helps with is when there are two separate interested parties or two entities that cannot see eye to eye. The end result, if we don't get a resolution, sends the company or the entities into a spiral and nobody wins. And I thought this was a very interesting concept. Again, he's a turnaround person. I am as well as the drop in CEO, but under different circumstances. But he had some really, really great insight. His way to operate was really through building deep relationships. And once you build some trust, you just say, like, what's this all about? Again, he used those words, what's this all about? And with his 40 to 50 years of amazing experience and this binder in tow, he convinces people and people trust and are confident that he is that person to not only manage the conflict such that the outcome that each party wants to achieve is the most favorable one or possible, but he also makes people feel good about the outcome. Again, sometimes we see situations or conflict as a not a win-win, but usually there is a win-loss. He seeks to find the win-win. So, what is this all about? First of all, I'm so inspired by David, and we're going to keep the conversations going. Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to bring up this concept because I want to bring it now to you. So, think about it. Why don't we have a chief conflict officer sitting at the table? One would say we should not have such a seat as our systems should be set up to avoid them. But what happens when bad things happen? For example, we will call the guy or gal from environmental health or safety, or quality, or legal, or corporate communications to directly deal and respond to when these issues happen. And we have contingency plans. We have mock recalls, all these things that we put in place to test the system when things from the outside come in and from the internal resources. How do we respond to maybe get to at least a stable situation? But we don't often really look deeply at external factors. Again, we only seem to focus on those things that are internal to our organization that we can control. But it may be things outside, such as political issues, regulatory issues, pending litigation, or international affairs, for which sometimes we don't have that capability on our team. And that should scare you. So something really bad happened and somebody wants to sue you for something that may or may not have happened. Yes, you can call your legal team, but they only have limited scope. And do they have the breadth of dealing with multiple parties and be able to achieve potentially a win-win outcome? And so, given this reality, how then do we build such capability within an organization to have what represents a chief conflict officer? Now, highly aware leaders will recognize the need for such a resource or framework to draw upon. However, some might shy away because they just can't justify a full time resource. And as David and I had discussed, how about a fractional chief conflict officer? And I'll raise my hand to that. I'm also a fractional leader. I come in when you need that capacity or capability, when you can't handle it. I'm not meant to stay there forever, but pull me out when you no longer need me. There has to be some kind of framework, especially for small and medium sized businesses who cannot afford a full time resource such as a chief conflict officer, but knows and recognizes the need for them. So I'm going to provide you the framework shortly. So, in this framework, I'm going to make some suggestions. Hey, I'm open to a dialogue. These are only my thoughts. But if you have leaned into the idea that, I need something that represents a chief conflict officer, maybe a chief crisis officer that just has the breadth of understanding the landscape, the business, and not necessarily just any legal issues or just regulatory. We want a one stop shop. And by the way, I happen to know some people other than my friend David, though David can fill that gap. Do you have that person or can you build that framework? So here are some suggestions that I offer to you. First of all, if you don't have that person in your network, I suggest you start networking for such a person, a fractional chief conflict officer, somebody that has the breadth of experience in mediating outcomes that ensure and serve all interested parties come out with a win. There's not a lot of them, but if you don't have anybody in your network, first of all, you can call me. I know a few, but also I may not be that person for your business, but I suggest network now. It may take a while, but gosh darn it, it would be nice to have somebody in your back pocket if something happens versus trying to hurry, scurry, and find that resource. So, network to find a chief conflict officer persona. Next, number two, define what are the potential external challenges. So, I might say, once you've found that crisis officer, leverage what their expertise is and what are those response plans we should at least have in place that the current resources can draw upon. Whether you are a heavily regulated industry, litigated, high profile recalls run amok, you need to just have a plan to respond. So bring them in, start brainstorming, start doing some stuff now. And also that enables you to build trust, which leans into that third thing. Bring them in ahead of time for small projects that make sense. And maybe you just haven't had the capability or capacity to do it. Again, succession planning, a crisis management plan, um, disaster recovery, whatever it might be, do that now because then that you insert that leader into the organization and you build trust along the way. So when the bad things might happen to you, you already have a trusted partner. It's a much better situation to draw upon that talent when you need them because you've already worked with them. Number four, I'm going to slow this down. When you feel something is burning, contact that resource now. Don't wait. Nothing may happen if you start feeling those uncomfortable feelings. You're seeing something in the news, the landscape, you're starting to get inquiries, complaints from your neighbors, what have you. Don't wait. Please call upon that fractional chief conflict officer now. Have the courage to ask for help now. And finally, number five, if you happen to be engaged in a conflict for which you do smartly leverage a fractional chief conflict officer, make sure you take care of your people. You may have this talent in your organization, but during that time, you need to assure calm and confidence to the rest of the team. And while this conflict is being managed, they're going to call upon your team for information and support. But along the way, while they're providing information and it's very transactional and very rapid pace, make sure you take care of the humans during a conflict. Be a calm voice to assure them we have all the resources we need in place to get through it. Because you need people to focus on the task at hand in order to achieve the optimal outcome. Hear their emotions, hear their concerns, give time and respect to it because they, in the end, will support you to achieve the outcomes and the best outcome from the current conflict. So there you have it. I'm going to quickly recap because I feel really, really good about this. And again, shout out to Dave, who is part of the inspiration for this conversation that I'm having with you now and bringing these insights. Network to find a chief conflict officer now. Don't wait. Start thinking about what the potential challenges are. Define those external entities that may make bad things happen to you and start collaborating on what those plans might be. Bring the resource in ahead of time to start partnering with your team. And by the way, if something is festering below the surface and you feel uncomfortable, respond now to it. And then all the while during the time of conflict, take care of your team. And so I am pleased One, if I can be of service to you, that's the drop in CEO. I often partner with the C-suite leader to help them see what is in the landscape, what is in the ecosystem that needs to be fixed, the bigger picture, and then make sure we elevate and take care of the people. But I also know people like Dave. If you need somebody that has experience with banking and regulatory, he's a really, really smart, energetic individual. Reach out to me. I'd love to make an introduction. Maybe we'll still get him on the podcast. But just in general, I do hope this conversation and these insights with leaning into conflict early and having a program and resources to leverage it and maybe even come out better at the end, reach out to me. Contact me on my website, dropinceo.com. My contact page is a way to schedule time with me. You can also message me on LinkedIn. That is me there behind the direct message. I will respond to you. Let's set up some time. I do hope this episode was good enough for you to implement out of the gate. And if you did, please let me know. I just love the feedback that propels me to keep going forward. And of course, as always, you hear me say, share this episode with at least one person so they can leverage these insights. And so I'm here for you. I'm really here for you. I hope the volume and the audio on this podcast was really good for you because I really want to make sure that when you listen to this, or if you follow me on YouTube and are watching this, the audio, the visual, the energy is making a difference in how you think. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to this theme, embracing conflict will help you to stay ahead of the conflict. That's my insight today. So I want to thank you for dropping in on another episode of the podcast, the Drop In CEO podcast. I'm Deb Coviello, your host and in service to you. And all I want to do is, one, ask you to come back for another episode, but I also want to wish you well and much success. And take care now.